Before we start, a few housekeeping notes. The session will be in English for the streaming, but we have translation available from English to Portuguese, and I believe that Portuguese to English as well, but mainly we'll be speaking on English. The idea is to have 2 rounds of remarks from our panelists. After that, 4 to 5 minutes each. And after that, I will open the floor for questions from the audience. With luck and good time management, we may have time for a few questions to further enrich the debate. That's being broadcasted, as I mentioned. That said, shall we to deepening integration between Brazil and the Caribbean countries, in particular, and between Latin America and the Caribbean more broadly. Overcoming this challenge is essential to enabling more efficient, resilient, and mutual beneficial connectivity. In the past years, we have seen improvements in this area. However, we still need to secure more funds, both public and private, and this is very important because, I mean, you have here a key opportunity, an opportunity to convey the key messages from our discussions, both to the board meeting at the Caribbean Development Bank that is meeting this week, but also in this Friday you will have Brazil-Caribbean Summit. They are going to be discussing precisely how to improve connection and to improve the relation between Brazil and the Caribbean countries. As highlighted in the breakout paper for this roundtable, working together to improve land, sea, and air connectivity between Brazil and the Caribbean countries is critical to enhance trade flows, facilitating the mobility of people, deepening cultural exchange, and creating jobs and new business opportunities. These are all the topics that are going to be on the agenda of both the CDB board meeting and also the summit meeting. So now we have this opportunity also to contribute to this debate, and we are privileged here today to have with us experts from both the public and private sector who bring deep knowledge and experience in this agenda. For the sake of time, I will not go through their extensive resume individually. You can find them on the event webpage. But believe me, I read it, and I'm pretty much sure that their insights will be a valuable contribution to the discussions today, and also to the debates at the CDB annual meeting and the summit this Friday. I'm confident that our discussions today can help develop concrete action plan that can guide progress in the strategic areas. Without further ado, I will now turn to the Secretary of Planning, Mr. João Vilaverde, from the Brazilian Minister of Planning and Budget. João, the Minister of Planning and Budget has been working in the past 2 years to develop and consolidate what is a very strategic project called the 5 South American Integration and Development Routes. How can this actually contribute strategically to enhancing connectivity with the Caribbean?
Thank you so much, Daniela, for the presentation. Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you enjoy your time here. Daniela didn't mention because she's such a generous person, but we couldn't do all that we have been doing without your insights and your effort and your dedication to this. This is a very insightful mind, and I invite you all to have a little bit of a debate with Daniela as soon as we are over here. But in regards of the roots of South America integration, this is something that speaks to the heart of President Lula. And I would love to start with that, and I would love to stress that just a little bit more. This is in the heart of President Lula. What this means is that this is a policy that the President of Brazil really enforces, really talks about it quite a lot. This is revealing and this is telling. Why? Because once you have the most charismatic person in politics in Brazil talking about subjects as integrating our continent, hence integrating our continent to the Caribbean, you have a lot of political push that you didn't have before. We have to embrace it, we have to enjoy it, because we know it won't last forever. So we have to take the opportunities once they're in front of us. Now direct to the point that Daniela just mentioned. How can Brazil and South America as a whole fulfill its goal to have more relationship to commerce, to tourism, to infrastructure in regards with the Caribbean countries? We believe that the answer, or at least one of the answers, one of the routes, no pun intended, is with the routes of integration of South America. Thank you. I was waiting for that, and I was just trying to make time for having this in my hand. Now I have this in my hand. We can move forward. I'm pushing, but it's not working. I'm just changing the time, and I added 20 minutes to my own time. Just pushing one button.
3 minutes. Okay.
I don't know what to do. I just need to move forward. But I can keep on talking for hours about this. This is also in my heart. But
so it's
anyway.
A pleasure to hear it, but not for hours. not this time.
So the presentation is on our website, and it's basically in 1 minute I will lead you to what we have here with the routes of integration to South America, and then in a couple of more minutes I will go with the relationship with the Caribbean countries. So this was born in May 30, 2023, so 2 years and a week from now, when President Lula gathered with all the presidents of the 12 countries of South America here in Brasilia. And together they built the Brasilia Consensus, which you can Google it. It's a text, very transparent text, in which all leaders from South America, left, center, and right-wing leaders, regardless of ideology, of political stances, they combined in a consensus that it was the right timing to rebuild and build infrastructure, cultural and environmental ties. After that, we immediately, in the Ministry of Planning and Budget, and together with the Minister of External Relations of Brazil, here represented by Daniela, we built this policy, which is a combination of public works, public engineering inside Brazil, and a combination of our relationship with the South American countries. We spoke with all South American countries to build that. And we keep on speaking with them. This morning, I woke up in Amapá State. I just got back here in Brasilia. Amapá State is the most, quote-unquote, Caribbean state in Brazil, because it's the northest state in Brazil, is eyeing the Caribbean. And once I mentioned there yesterday and early this morning what I was going to do here, people's eyes were really open, because not only Amapá and Brazil as a whole, but all folks wants to make more business with the Caribbean. This means the route number 1 of the 5 routes. Route number 1 is the Guyana Island, as we call it, because it combines Amapá State, Roraima State, Pará State, and Amazonas State with the north of South America, which is the most Caribbean part of South America. It's not this slide. The slide is not keeping up with my presentation, so don't worry about that. It's the combination of roads, waterways, and infovias. How can I say that in English? Digital integration. That would be somewhat of a translation. So that's the one. So the Guyana's Island. So this is route number 1, the first of the 5 routes. This is the most Caribbean of them all. What we think we can add and contribute with the Caribbean countries and vice versa. Here we have the Amapá State, where I was this morning, where you have the Santana Port. The Santana Port is being rebuilt. I think that's not the right wording, but you got the idea. Rebuilt to receive more imports that you can shift to Dominican Republic, to Trinidad and Tobago, to Jamaica, so on and so forth. We can export more goods from Brazil that can reduce inflation in Caribbean countries, and reduce inflation is always good whenever you are, whatever you are. To have low inflation is always good, and we can import more from the Caribbean countries. And we need a good port to connect that. This good port is the Santana Port in Amapá State. It's exactly the city of Macapá. Santana is very close to Macapá in this map. So this is one thing. My last 40 seconds, I will mention other 2 things. First, the open air policy here in Brazil, to have more flights in Brazil to the Caribbean countries. Last year, I was with Minister Simone Tebet in Dominican Republic. That was when we were part of the annual assembly of the IDB. And we had the opportunity to meet with all of the Minister of Finance of all South American countries, and also the Caribbean countries, as the case of the Dominican Republic. And most of the folks were mentioning the key issue, that is tourism. Because once you get by a country and you like your experience, what is the first thing you have in your mind is to return, right? You want to go back because you came with a smile on your face. The second thing is, oh, I want to live there. Person, you want to make a joint venture with someone. So we can enforce joint ventures by companies from Brazil and the Caribbean countries. And the third and last, is waterways. So in this region of Brazil, you have the largest river on earth. People tend to think it's the Nile River in Egypt. That's where it all started, right? But it's the Amazon River. The Amazon River, it's not only the largest, but it's such a beautiful place for tourism for folks from the Caribbean. So I was speaking about Brazilians going to the Caribbean countries and returning with business ideas. Now I'm inviting people from the Caribbean to reach and make tourism also in the northeast part of Brazil. I can go on and on infrastructure, but I will stop there. Thank you.
Actually, to hint to two important things here. First, we're talking about port infrastructure, and also, and I think that's very important to bear in mind, the need to actually connect all the different initiatives we have been actually developing in our different countries. But with that, I will turn, and I love, as I mentioned before, I'd love to hear you going on and on, but then we have some time constraints. So I will turn to Mr. Lewis from the Caribbean Development Bank. You have been working a lot of investment projects in the bank. So, I mean, it would be interesting to see, in your views, which infrastructure investments priorities could have at this point in time great impact on improving regional connectivity between Brazil and the Caribbean countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. On behalf of the bank, I would like to say thank you for allowing us to participate in this important conversation. There are opportunities for growth, but as it stands now, Brazil is actually the 5th largest trade partner with CARICOM. And the trade flows total over $2 billion US in 2023. Having said that, that represents a decline over a period of time, because at one point it was as high as $5 billion back in 2008. And so this indicates the vast potential there is for growth in terms of our collaboration. And this has the potential to impact positively the lives of the people in the Caribbean and in Brazil by reducing our cost of living, because there are things that you produce in Brazil that can benefit the Caribbean, and there are things that the Caribbean can produce that can benefit Brazil. I have a list of projects that we've done. We agree totally with the previous speaker that infrastructure is a priority, and trade facilitation, regulation, all those things are important. But I'm going to double down on what he said in terms of the Guyana-Brazil link. I think that really does provide great potential, significant potential for opening up the Caribbean . I would highlight one project that we're currently financing, the Linden to Marlborough Road, which is part of the Linden to Lethem corridor, which there still needs to be significant investment in that corridor. But they've started, and with the help of the UK, with the UK and CDB funding and funding from the government of Guyana, we're doing, I think it's 120 kilometers of that road between Linden and Marlborough, but about 200 kilometers remain unpaved. And I think it's absolutely critical that we work together to find, because it's a tremendous investment. I think part of the challenge would be the upfront financing, and how do we come up with financing models, innovative financing models that would share the risk between the countries and the governments of Brazil, governments of Guyana, and the private sector to maximize that effort. In terms of what that opens up, it opens up, we spoke about marine flow, marine trade. It opens up possibilities for Guyana also, both in air and seaports. There's opportunities, for example, to expand the Guyana port to be able to take additional goods from Brazil, or even constructing new port facilities in areas like Berbice, for example, that would open up the Atlantic, open up trade from the north, from Guyana, from north of Brazil through Guyana to Trinidad and Tobago, to all the other countries that exist. And similarly with air transport, Lethem, for example, improving air infrastructure airport infrastructure in Lethem would open up possibilities of better and more efficient transport systems. quickly, before I end, the area of port facilitation, trade facilitation is critical. We have worked with Barbados, Belize, Suriname, the OECS to do trade facilitation, mainly focusing on the port community systems, the trade single window, maritime single window, and maritime security both at the regional and national levels. Priorities would include digitalization aspects. I think you spoke to that. I think that's absolutely critical. Creating the environment and enabling an environment to support private sector investment to deal with some of those initial investments that we need. And also the decarbonization of the maritime transport sector is absolutely critical, because that they will need to be complying with the requirements of the International Maritime Organization moving forward. And so in our development, we have to keep those in mind. So I will stick with those for now.
Hold that thought, because we come back on the finance and mobilization of resource, which is very, very important. And thank you for pointing out the role that Guyana can play here. Guyana is a member of the South American Integration Infrastructure Network. We have been working on an observatory, and I think that we have room there to improve discussions on how to actually connect South America to the Caribbean through this vein. But I would like to hear now, I will turn from the perspective of the private sector, because I think that is absolutely important to have their view on board to help to build a strategic plan. So I have here a representative from Embraer, who has obviously a lot of stakes in terms of aircraft connectivity. So from the perspective of the private aviation sector, Veronica, which initiatives should be prioritized to enhance connectivity with the Caribbean? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Madam Ambassador. And first of all, good afternoon, all. First of all, congratulations on putting together this debate, which we see as critical. And thank you, of course, for inviting Embraer to contribute and to bring the perspective of the private sector, especially being a manufacturer from Brazil and from the region, right? So we are one case in which a company had to overcome the challenges of doing business in the region, and there are challenges, but also a success story, I would say, being today one of the 3 largest aircraft manufacturers in the world, and with planes flying all over the world. We can say for a fact from our experience that our success story is directly connected with strategic projects and initiatives discussed by the state, as the ones you are discussing today and the ones you're discussing this week in this meeting. So congratulations and thank you once again for being part in this debate. I think I would highlight this aspect of the Embraer experience, both in terms of the connection with the Brazilian state, because there are lessons learned from our history that can certainly be applied by the private sector and the aviation sector in the region, both in South America and the Caribbean. So for once, I of course have to stress the importance of the BNDES, of the Brazilian Development Bank, in both financing sales, but also financing research and development and innovation in the country. And also, of course, we wouldn't be there, we wouldn't be flying our planes all over the world in over 100 countries today if we didn't have a world-renowned regulatory agency that can ensure the quality of our planes. So we have to progress and we have to advance hand in hand with our regulatory agencies. So really take this opportunity to also thank ANAC for all the support in our work worldwide. And this debate in particular is very special and very close to the heart of Embraer, because our success story is connected to regional aviation, right? We have been part in our 55 years of history in the development of well-established markets for regional aviation in the US and in Europe. And the lessons learned there really echo what the ambassador said in the beginning. So regional aviation and connecting, air connectivity, means growing business. It means taking new business, really, micro and small businesses, to flourish in regions it wouldn't before. It means exchange of cultures and, of course, tourism, promoting tourism. And with that, we are promoting economic development and social development and so on. And our experience is very much connected with that. I'll talk a little bit more about planes afterwards, but I think to be very straight to the point on measures and initiatives that we believe can help promote connectivity between South America and the Caribbean. I would highlight 4 specific points that we can later on discuss in greater detail. But one of them, and of course, they all vary in complexity, I'll give you that, and they all vary in the time needed for implementation. But the first one of them would be open skies agreements. So we are talking about encouraging more liberal air service agreements between our nations and between our nation and other regions as well, right? So, for example, agreements like CARICOM's multilateral air services agreement could advance even further. Lowering taxes and fees. I know this is a very regular topic for the private sector to talk about, lowering taxes. But the fact is that excessive aviation taxes are a significant barrier to the private sector to operate. So in some countries of the region, taxes and fees can constitute up to 70% of ticket fees. So that's quite a high range. And airline CEOs and organizations like IATA have called for reforms of these. And some countries, some governments have individually adopted some measures to reduce these burdens. That's the case of Antigua and Barbuda, for example, that cut down on 50%. But a harmonized discussion among the regions is something that could benefit the whole sector. And that's the case for infrastructure investments as well, of course, modernizing infrastructure, so investment in airport upgrades, in air traffic control. And this is something that we don't talk much about, but even when we talk about sustainability in the sector, when usually the discussion is on biofuels and fuels, which is a key factor for aviation, of course, but air traffic management is also something that makes a difference in sustainability. As passengers, you probably only get annoyed when your flight gets delayed or when you have to fly over a city for some time before landing, but this means fuels burning. So this also means costs for the airline and for the environment. So better air traffic control and technology, of course, to manage efficiently the increase in air traffic is something that can be and should be encouraged. And that's an area where we see the Caribbean Development Bank being able to help and to support the sector. And last but not least, improving the ease of traveling. This is something that can also have coordinated efforts between the region, both within the Caribbean and with South America. So measures such as harmonizing visa and immigration policies across the region to make traveling both for tourism and for business easier is something that could support connectivity.
Okay. Thank you. Now, it's very, very interesting. I think you mentioned 2 issues that is really, really important. One of them, public and private partnership. I think that this is absolutely important. This will be important for finance, but it's also important in terms to find practical solutions. And then harmonization, coordination, and have an space, a forum where we can actually put this together, have this comprehensive view on solving the problems. But from air to maritime, which is very important to the Caribbean, I hope, talking about connectivity, the gods of internet help us. We do have a colleague from Mr. Engineer Sabonge from Panama currently, but has a long experience with the Caribbean. And he has been dealing with ports and maritime connection for a while. I don't know whether you are listening to us. Are you connected? We can hear you. Thank you for joining us. And it was a pleasure to have you here. And I would actually benefit from your experience to actually try to ask what concrete steps would be required to actually work and consolidate maritime hubs linking South America and the Caribbean. We mentioned ports, but of course, I mean, it would be interesting also to have your view on what can we actually done more to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this panel. As former Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, we have a mandate to improve connectivity, facilitate the progress of trade and integration. I have to say that that was a bit of a challenge, and one of the issues I want to talk has to do with trading partners. I really think that most of the countries don't know they're trading social partners long before. And this is something that is it is a personal thing. Trade has to do with trust. And it also has to do with trading partners. So as practical as it can be, first thing we bring the parties together. This is really the only way that we can really have business between two groups or two different groups. And because the long relationships that there exist with the existing trading partners are very difficult to change. And I don't know how familiar you are with recently penalties implemented there was a move by CARICOM together with the Caribbean shipping line to be able to get an extension. Because in reality, most of that trade comes to the island, comes from the land, using exactly this same shipping line. So, breaking that and bringing other players into the region is something that needs to be done in parallel with building infrastructure and doing all the things that I'm mentioning. But you really need to establish that relationship between the potential trading partners. And the other thing that I want to mention, I think that it goes along with the previous speaker, is that in addition to PPPs for infrastructure, there needs to be also a change in the way that shipping lines, air services operate. And the reason I say that is because, of course, private sector, they all want to have profit. That's the only reason for that to exist. But that what happens in this region is that there is a very low population, low cargo demand, and therefore the economies of scale are not necessarily there to establish the services with the frequency and the quality that we need. So what I had proposed previously while I was Secretary General to start thinking maybe of a regional PPP for transport services. And this applies both to air as well as to sea. And the reason I say that is because the same way that in the Mediterranean, where they established the highways of the sea that were really aimed at reducing the cargo that was moving by highway and eliminating some of those emissions. I really think that you need to establish some services like that, where the region actually comes together. You have a regional PPP to establish the transport service. This is quite innovative because usually multilateral development bodies have not dealt with that kind of. There are initiatives in which 2 figure for services. And I really think that unless we provide a service with some kind of saddle pricing, where the government actually understands that the public transport service really needs to be somehow subsidized or incentivized to have it, then you are never going to come out of that with service. When there isn't enough services, there aren't enough services to provide what is needed to develop trade and to develop tourism. Because the two go hand in hand. I mean, there aren't really intra-regional services good enough to promote tourism in the region or to promote trade intra-region. Most of the transport services offered for other purposes. And you are now seeing, for instance, a lot of people like from the U.S. basically comes to the Caribbean, and airlines coming from Europe, from the U.S., Canada, but you don't really have intra-regional service. So this was something that we tried to approach from the ACS. But like I said, we really need to have the two in parallel. Develop the infrastructure, develop the services, and also we need to develop the trade.
This inside, I believe that you highlight a very important point. I mean, you also need to have a way of identify business opportunities and to join efforts in terms of actually to be more smart in a way, have this intelligence in terms of how you can promote more integration. And turning to one aspect that was mentioned before as important by many of you, the question of regulatory framework and what need to be done. We have the opportunity to have here with us a representative from ANAC, so our national agents for civil aviation. So which are the main areas we have been working towards to try to improve the regulatory framework for connectivity in our region?
Thank you, Mrs. Ambassador. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, you see, ANAC is almost 20 years now, and since the creation of ANAC, ANAC has envisaged, open skies agreement, because we believe that this is the main tool, to get, to give opportunities for airlines to operate and to plan their flights, and of course, to improve connectivity. So, as I said, this is our policy now, and we have improved a lot from 120 agreements that we have. Around 70% are what we call open skies. So this is important for us. To, as I said, to give the possibility for airlines to improve connectivity. Regarding also the regulatory framework, we have also changed our regulation. So since 2022, that was the last revision that we did in our regulation. So we made it very easy and fast for airlines, for foreign carriers to operate in Brazil, to operate to and from Brazil. So we have two models. One is what we call non-scheduled flights, that is like ad hoc flights. So we can give an authorization, let's say in 5 days for those airlines. And also we have, of course, the scheduled flights that are like Copa, like American, that fly with regularity, so it's very easy as well. So we have improved a lot in these terms, and I think that the results are very good. Regarding especially Caribbean, I have a map here, I don't know if they can show it, but we have agreement with some countries in the Caribbean, and also we have some links with them. Of course, we used to have more in the past, but now I think there is a lot of room to improve the connectivity between Brazil and the Caribbean. So now we have wide open, according to our policy, agreements with Suriname, with Guyana, with Antigua and Barbuda, we have with the Dominican Republic, and we also have open agreement with Curaçao, with Aruba, with Bahamas, Jamaica, and we also have some not so good agreements, but they don't, represent any restriction to flights with Haiti and Cuba. But these agreements, what they are missing is what we call traffic rights for fifth freedom. Fifth freedom is something that allows a combination of two or more markets in order to make flights, let's say, sustainable in the economic point of view. But as I said, they don't mean restriction right now because we don't have a limitation on the number of frequencies that can be operated. And we are working now this week. We hopefully will have an quite open agreement with Barbados. We hope to have it signed on Friday on the summit, and also with Trinidad and Tobago, a very good agreement as well. It's an open sky agreement that would maybe take a bit longer, but we hope to have it ready in the next weeks or so. So we are working hard in this. We would love to have an agreement with CARICOM as well, but we need to check some let's say, legal aspects in order to do that, okay? So this is what we are doing in terms of, let's say, air services agreements. But of course, there are other aspects that we are working on, and especially on the project of regional integration that we can talk about that later.
No, just in time. No, absolutely, and I think that the challenge we have now is actually how to connect all these different initiatives, so to have a meaningful impact in terms of air connectivity and more integration. Finally, but not less important, we have talking a lot about air connectivity, maritime connectivity, but I do know that IPEA has research and has been studying a lot how can digital infrastructure and energy integration also be a part of this equation. So it would be interesting to know how can we actually focus more on that, and what should we work with from now on as well to make sure that this is also part of our work here. Luis, please.
Now it's working. So thank you very much, Ambassador Daniela. I also take the opportunity to greet our colleagues in this panel and welcome the audience. So I will try to base this presentation on this extensive research agenda that we have been developing at IPEA on regional integration in general, but also on the relations between Brazil and the Caribbean. And before addressing these specific topics, I think it's very important to clarify that effective integration occurs not only on a physical level of trade and transport, for example, but also in less visible yet equally important dimensions, which is the case of digital infrastructure and also energy and electricity. And in the case of Brazil's integration with the Caribbean, I agree with Secretary Villaverde that a very strategic starting point is the region known as the Guianas Island, which corresponds to integration route number 1 of our Ministry of Planning, and is also the portion of the Caribbean with which Brazil holds the closest ties for obvious reasons of geographic proximity and also the fact that we share land connections. And now, starting with the topic of digital connectivity, I find it very remarkable that Brazil's National Telecommunications Agency, Anatel, ranks the state of Roraima as having the worst internet access in the country, Amazonas as having the second worst access, Pará the third worst, and Amapá the eighth worst. And these are precisely the 4 Brazilian states that integrate, that compose the Guiana's island route, along, of course, with Guyana, French Guiana, and Suriname. And in the case of Roraima and Amapá, a very pressing issue is that we have a single fiber optic cable linking each of these states to the broader national network. So when a disruption occurs, for example, a failure in the link between Roraima and Amazonas, entire populations in the state of Roraima, for example, are left without proper internet access. But this is not an exclusivity of the states of Amapá and Roraima, because our neighboring countries and in the Guianas, they equally face some connectivity challenges. And our proposal in our studies is to tackle this issue through the integration of Brazilian and Caribbean networks, creating a sort of optical ring across the Guiana's island, which by increasing density of the network, it would enhance internet speed and also reliability, while ensuring continued service even during interruptions in one of the streams, because there would be larger density in the network. And now moving on to energy integration, I would say that the situation is quite similar, because Amapá and Roraima, they remain among the Brazilian states with the most unstable electricity supply and also the highest incidence of blackouts. Roraima in particular, it's the only Brazilian state not yet linked to the national interconnected system, even though this is expected to change with the ongoing construction of the Tucuruí transmission line, that we call in Portuguese Linhão de Tucuruí. And if I'm not mistaken, Amapá was only integrated into the system in 2015, so it's also pretty recent. And due to this lack of interconnection, Roraima still relies mainly on thermoelectric power plants, just like the situation of Guyana and also Suriname, where fossil fuels are the main energy source as well. But our understanding is that with economic growth, energy demand in Guyana and also in Suriname, it's expected to surge. And in this context, regional cooperation becomes more important than ever. And our proposal is to develop the underused hydroelectric potential of the Guianas. And that's because it's a region that has a rainfall pattern that is very complementary to that of the southern Amazon basin, which is where Brazil's main Amazonian dams are located, which is the case, for example, of Belo Monte, of Tucuruí, of Jirau, of Santo Antônio. And while this region, the southern Amazon basin, it receives peak rainfall between the months of December and April, the Guianas, they have their rainiest season between May and September. So these are very complementary hydrological regimes, which is very important in terms of offsetting volatility and ensuring energy security in the overall system. And this possibility of joint hydraulic projects between Brazil, Guyana, Suriname, and also French Guiana, it's explicitly mentioned in the latest 10-year energy expansion plan of our Ministry of Mines and Energy. But to make it feasible, of course, a precondition is the interconnection of Brazil's transmission lines with those of our Caribbean neighboring states. And that would surely reduce the risk of blackouts and also allow for a more sustainable and secure energy supply throughout the region of the Guianas Islands. So in short, to conclude, just like physical and trade integration, enhancing digital and also energy infrastructure in the region, it's very key to deepening the connection between South America and the Caribbean, which is not an end in itself, but is also a very important means to promote development in that region, which still faces social and economic deficiencies that are even more acute, that are even greater than the Latin American average.
And particularly the need to actually, when we developed internal strategies and plans, to actually incorporate this regional approach, because this is actually what would make a difference. And I'm glad to say that we have have some discussions on the CELAC and other regional forums, but we need more that, and certainly need more funding for the rings. The proposal you just made in terms of a digital ring, I like it very much. But talking about that, and maybe that Minister of Planning and Budget may have a role here. How can we, from the government, we actually can help to forge this partnership in terms of planning, in terms of budget, together with regional banks, but also with other countries? How can we actually make sure that we are all on board and you can have these discussions and plan together for integration to happen?
Sweet, this is awesome. So I will try not to bore you all, because I can talk for hours on this specific subject, but I will try to tackle it in three items. Or three bullet points. First of all, knowing the specific projects that can really impact businesses as a whole, public and private. So having a very transparent and very pragmatic starting point of projects, what matters. So my colleague here mentioning in his part, one key infrastructure project for Brazil, for Guyana, hence for the Caribbean, which is the road in our Route 1, the Guyana Island, that you probably are seeing, the 5 routes. We cannot see here in the screen, but hopefully you are, which is the brown one in the Route 1. This road is being constructed, financed by the Caribbean Development Bank, but we still have the black, which is painted black in this road, that is up to be built. So this is mandatory. This is very instrumental for Brazil, for Guyana, and for the Caribbean. This is one thing. Also in the projects, and I promise not to bore you, but we need also bridges connecting Suriname and the French Guyana, and Suriname with the Guyana. Guyana is the country that is with the strongest number of GDP growth on planet Earth. You need to leave the planet to find a country that is growing more than Guyana. We need to connect more. We were there last year, Ambassador Daniela with me, in Georgetown, and we saw, I mean, this immense population that is growing, that wants to consume goods and services, but it's mostly consuming goods and services from Turkey, from Canada, from furthest part of our planet. It could and it should and you want to consume more from the Caribbean and from the South and from South America. So we need ports, we need bridges, we need roads, we need digital connectivity, we need open flight, the agenda that Embraer and ANAC mentioned. So this is one thing, knowing the projects. Second, events like this. In here, you not only have folks here, but I can see key people here. I can see Luciana Botafogo, she's the president of a bank, Fomplata Bank, and she's here. And I invite you all to talk with her. I also can see Virginia De Angelis, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, also a Secretary of State within the Ministry of Planning and Budget, and she's leading the Brazil 2050 agenda, what Brazil thinks and dreams of being in 25 years from now. So this is our starting point for Brazil and South America as well. We have our team here, and I can name Marcelo, Morelo, and Laís Barros, and with them I name the team. So we can use events like this to connect within us and to start to make businesses. And third and last, so projects, knowing exactly what we want, exactly what we need. Second, networking. Third, we have to use the window of opportunity that is open in front of us. And I need to talk 30 seconds about politics, and I'm so sorry for that. but I need to. It's not always that you have a president in the largest country of our continent, that is Brazil, that is a multilateralism president oriented. Lula is. Lula believes in a South America more connected. President Lula believes in South America being more connected with the Caribbean. He is the president now. We need to use that window of opportunity. It could last a little bit longer. It could last less, but we need to use it now. So we need to have this sense of urgency to build things together. To wrap this up, I would mention that this policy that we have been leading together with the Minister of External Relations, the routes of integration of South America, it combines railways, highways, roads as a whole, waterways, ports, and airports. We can and we should connect more with tourism. I cannot stress that enough, with tourism, because that opens doors for businesses, and also to have more partnership with the private sector. We saw that, and that's my last example, with the aforementioned Santana port. I woke up this morning in Amapá State. There, the Santana port is being more and more being driven by private investors in the Amazon. So we're pushing this agenda, and we can push some more this agenda. I stop here.
No, thank you. I mean, I think you mentioned very important things. Political leverage is key. Technical discussions is important. Knowing what we need is also important. In South America, you're working on an observatory of infrastructure. I think that this is an experience that you could actually try to expand to the whole region, because you need to know what are the projects there and how can we actually be together and secure fundings. And then, of course, I turn to my second question to Mr. Lewis. How the CDB can actually foster joint initiatives with other regional financial institutions, and obviously Luciano is here, they can after develop on this, to scale up and ensure sustainable finance for infrastructure projects.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'm tempted to forego that question because there's such a rich variety of expertise in the audience. I would like to give them the biggest opportunity to participate. I see Dr. Balgobin I'm sure he's itching to make a comment on the Lyndon Road. I see various other stakeholders in the Caribbean who are willing, who want to participate. So I will truncate my answer very briefly by giving an example of a recent collaboration effort that we've done. In 2024, CDB led the creation, and CDB meaning internally William Ashby is my colleague who led this initiative, led the creation of a working group amongst development partners and other stakeholders in the area of maritime connectivity, logistics, and trade. That group included the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, CAF, European Union, CARICOM, the Port Management Association of the Caribbean, and the Association of Caribbean States, amongst others. The Caribbean private sector organizations, they have also been invited to join. And this forum provides a forum for deriving and highlighting priorities for investments and for decision making amongst partners about allocation amongst the banks and projects and what their priorities are, and for coordinating. And that group, all of the participants are extremely passionate and are working, and they meet, I think, fairly regularly to advance that cause. And the intention is to also create a similar working group for aviation, specialist working group for aviation. One of the things that has already been agreed is that a data hub would be created at the World Bank, which would be a repository for reports and information collected on all of the maritime transport issues. And amongst the MDBs and the European Union, there is a great interest in developing a regional program for support of improved connectivity. Support could be made available to countries in areas including infrastructure, decarbonization, digitalization, and capacity building. Involved in the preliminary discussions for these efforts are CAF, the World Bank, European Union, and the CDB. And I think there's an opportunity here, which remains unsaid, but I should say it explicitly, for Brazil to participate. The correct agency in Brazil, maybe it is the BNDES, I'm not sure, to participate in these conversations formally, and we would work on trying to facilitate that interaction. I will leave it there for now. Thanks, Chair.
Oh, no, thank you very much. This is also very important. I mean, somehow we need also to improve the exchange and the communication between ourselves. I mean, knowing more about these different experiences can be very useful to others, sub-regions, let's say, but also to make sure that we can participate and exchange. So thank you very much for this. And I will turn now to you, Veronica, again, let's talk about transport hubs. I mean, how can we actually work more on that and try to, again, I mean, I'm turning on the partnership thing because I think that's what we need now. I mean, and I think the experience of, for instance, Panama and others as big hubs are very important. So how can you actually work with the private sector to try to identify more of these and try to advance in terms of these partnerships? Thank you.
Is it still? Yeah, on. I think before I even jump into the question, it's worth saying that there is demand, right? Because when we talk about hubs, we need actually demand for traveling. And when we say, well, there is already Panama, for instance, is there still space for new hubs in the region? And the answer, in our point of view, is that yes. So there is still a lot of space and a growing demand for aviation between South America and the Caribbean, between our regions and the US and North America. This sector has been recovering quite well from the COVID times, and Latin America and the Caribbean saw a 10% growth in international air travel last year. And the fact is that many routes between South America and the Caribbean are still underserved. So there is space for growing. Often this means we have to travel to Panama or to the US to come to Guyana, right? And to many other countries in the region. So you probably had that experience coming to this meeting this week. So there are low-cost carriers trying to bridge that gap and to fill in that gap. Quite recently we saw Inter-Caribbean bring in Embraer planes to operate in the region and to connect South America and the Caribbean. But again, there is a gap. So having said that, I've spoken a little bit in the first part about more of government and initiatives and measures, but there is a lot to be done in terms of the private sector and even state-owned companies as well in terms of investing. And one point that I would definitely stress is having the right fleet of aircraft, right? So if you're talking about having a hub, it also means the airlines have to organize their fleets in terms of right-sized aircraft. What I'm saying is basically that larger aircraft may not serve all the region, and smaller aircraft the same. So low population density and distance between the islands means that jets at a lower cost are necessary for the region, right? And that's where we have to say that our jets are quite well sized for the region. And that's not just because I'm Embraer saying this, but it's because the experience shows that you need smaller jets to fill in the gaps and to create demand. So you need to establish the flights to create demand before you can actually grow into larger aircraft and so on. And these planes, well, they offer low maintenance costs and they operate in smaller infrastructures and so on. And in addition to the aircraft fleet, right, I would say we have airline cooperation. So yes, we're talking about government cooperation here, but airlines can also have partnerships with larger airlines worldwide to create these hubs and promote alliances. And a point that I believe the Secretary mentioned as well, which is connecting tourism to airline. So an alignment between what airlines are doing, the strategies, their hubs, and so on, with the strategies, government strategies in terms of tourism. So coordinating tourism boards and airlines to create joint campaigns and routes initiatives, for example. These are some of the measures that we thought. We are confident, as the Secretary is, that the moment is very good to promote this work between our manufacturers and airlines between themselves and between governments. And just to close, I suppose I would like to invite everyone to come visit Embraer facilities in São Paulo, not this time, in your next time in Brazil, and learn more of what we're doing here. It would really be a pleasure to cooperate more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that you mentioned also a very important point. I mean, and I think that's something that is going to be very useful for our leaders that are meeting on Friday, the idea of having this tourism promotion strategy putting together. I think that there's a lot of room to improve there. But, I mean, adding along this line, I will turn to Engineer Sabons. Based on your experience, I mean, how can we actually work also with something that could be very useful in this regard, which would be an intermodal integration between air and maritime transport? How can you actually connect these two worlds? They are both necessary in terms of connectivity between Brazil and the Caribbean. And yes, it's true. Whoever has to travel from Brazil to the Caribbean and the Caribbean to Brazil know that can be a challenge. And I believe that you are talking only a passenger, and you are not only talking about passenger here, we are talking about trade, we are talking about connecting goods as well. So, I mean, how can we work on along this line? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ambassador. First of all, each mode of transport is tailored to different needs. A cargo such as dry and liquid bulk, seafood, project cargo is always moved by sea. But with the advent of e-commerce, a lot of finished goods now move in small packages and can even fly in passenger planes. This trend will continue to expand, but then the Caribbean problem is multiplied because the air transport for passengers is very good, both in frequency and quality, and of course that makes it very expensive. So, as I responded to my first question, I mentioned the PPP as an avenue to promote both air and sea services. But what we need also to understand is that not all countries can be a hub. I think that the explanation that was given before is very good. You really have to know that there is density of cargo, density of demand, of passengers, so that you can justify the existence of the hub. And most likely the Caribbean lends itself to maybe having one or two, maximum two hubs, so that you can really relay from the hub as a whole. So there needs to be a rational decision as where to develop those hubs in the Caribbean. And the rational decision has to be based in geography, distances, and demand. I mean, this is something that needs to be agreed upon by the Caribbean countries. Now, there is something else, and I really think that you can continue trying to solve the same problem, but if you don't change the solution, you're going to have the same result. There are two new players in the market that are innovative sharing the same port with the cruise industry, and then you have the cargo ship that's way, and the cargo ship is bringing like 2 boats. And this is the kind of thing that makes it very inefficient and costly. So airships is one alternative that you could explore for developing transport solutions in this region. It has already worked in Asian countries for smaller islands. But there is something new also coming online that I don't know if Embraer has explored this possibility, and that is cargo drones. I mean, cargo drones are right now at the level where you can really have a lot of cargo and move up to 2,500 kilos. And what you see normally in between the islands is small cargo parcels that really you would need to have some sort of transport service that can be both efficient and economic. So these are 2 areas that I wanted to mention, because you also have the need for supporting humanitarian aid whenever there is a problem to climate change or to some of the natural phenomena that is also affecting this island. But the good thing about both of these solutions is that they can work together with air, passenger services, and also sea. So you really, when you're talking about looking at this in a multi-modal fashion, you really need to think of all the different alternatives and solutions and bring them all together to the region that is so particular in the way that it is geographically dispersed.
Okay, now it's working. Now, thank you so much. I think that's also important to keep mind open and to seek for innovative solutions using technology. I would imagine that you are running out of time, so I go straight to the 2 of us without interruption. My fault. I always tend to want to compliment or to comment because so many interesting remarks. But, I mean, you mentioned before, what you are doing in South America to talk in terms of open skies and regional integration, and so how this discussion can contribute also to help us in connecting with the Caribbean. And then, Luis, based upon what we heard, I mean, and based, of course, on IPA's research, what would be the alternatives? I mean, what would be where you should be focused from now on? And then I think that it would be nice that you just jump after Hogue, so then you may have some time for questions. Thank you.
Well, you see, what we are looking at right now is, I mentioned regional integration. This is something that we realized some time ago, that the rules for, let's say, for authorization for flights in the region were not harmonized. And then we noticed that there was a need to try to harmonize that, right? So we start something at the LACAC region. LACAC is the Latin American Civil Aviation Commission. So we started some work on that. Of course, it's not that easy, but we started. And then that evolved within ANAC to what we call the Regional Integration Priorities Project. So this is something that, of course, is much wider than what we thought at the beginning. And again, we had the Brasilia Consensus that was mentioned here. So this integration is part of it, of course, because air links are very important to connect countries, to connect peoples, to connect region. And we also noticed that although ICAO, that's the International Civil Aviation Organization, that is now 80 years old, but it started with a very closed system, right? Of course, that was understandable. But it evolved a lot, but there is some road, to go still. And we believe that the regional vision is easier to get, the results that we are looking at. To have integration, to have open skies, for the region. We have some initiatives within LACAC already. We have a multilateral agreement within LACAC. We have also a memorandum of understanding to liberalize cargo. And so these initiatives, we are trying to, let's say, enhance within this regional integration, and not only with LACAC. Of course, Caribbean is just next door, and although it is far because we don't have a connection. So it's something that we need to look at, and in that aspect, we thank you, Mrs. Ambassador, because your support in this is very important, and we know that you are a very enthusiast in this aspect. So this is what we are looking at.
No, thank you so much. I think that that's the reason we all are here, trying to figure out how to advance. And then I think that, I leave to you the room to actually, based upon the research and what you heard, where should we aim at?
Well, it's a very complex question, but I will try to be brief since we are already running out of time. So regarding what should be our priorities in the future, I would like to highlight that in the long run, in the long term, the deepening of regional integration, it's only sustainable through robust governance arrangements, frameworks, that first allow a comprehensive debate on how to integrate, how we should do that, and second, governance arrangements that are also able to keep up with progress in as much as infrastructure projects are carried out, because once the public works are ready, we will create integration flows, and we need an arena of decision to manage these new flows. This is something very important to think for the future. And at present, of course, we have CELAC, but it has it's broader, it has a different scope. But the only governance mechanism that is specifically focused on the integration between Brazil and the Caribbean, I would say that it is the 3 working groups between Brazil, Guyana, and Suriname that were established by a joint presidential declaration last year. And these working groups, they address issues of physical and digital infrastructure, of energy, and also of transnational crime, respectively. And they do represent an important platform for the integration between the Brazil and the Caribbean, but they also face some limitations. And I would like to emphasize, on the one hand, the absence of high-level forums, and also the exclusion, the absence of other Caribbean nations, so mainly the island countries of the Caribbean. And in this regard, we very much welcome spaces like the Brazil-Caribbean Summit to be held this Friday, since it's a comprehensive and high-level initiative that is bringing together 17 heads of state, if I'm not mistaken, and it is specifically devoted to enhancing connectivity between our 2 regions, Brazil and the Caribbean. However, in order for integration to be lasting and also effective, this kind of event, it should happen regularly, not only 1 time or 2 times. And it should allow discussions to evolve in depth and also in detail. And simultaneously, I think it's also crucial to build public support. And for that, it's really important to involve the private sector, our companies, also the civil society, and also, for example, subnational entities. Because after all, these are often the actors, non-state actors, that actually operationalize integration once infrastructure and regulatory issues, they are already addressed by the governments. And from our perspective, a good governance example is the Capricorn Bioceanic Corridor, which corresponds to the Route 4 of our Ministry of Planning. And this route, it has a working group that holds regular meeting every year since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And from my personal experience, I can tell that it has very broad and active presence and participation of the private sector, of the civil society, and also from universities. And it's also noteworthy that besides the main event, subnational governance, so states, provinces, and cities, they also organize a specific forum that aims at discussing the local dimension of that integration route. So I think that this is a very interesting model of governance that can serve as a benchmarking, as a reference for other routes to be implemented with public works executed in the future. It's very overarching, it's effective, and it's plural and diverse with different actors, even non-state actors. And our proposal, therefore, is that a similar governance arrangement could be developed for the integration between Brazil and the Caribbean as well. And that doesn't need to be built from scratch. We can draw on existing institutional frameworks. So some examples include, for example, this week's summit, which could be continued through other editions and expanded to include non-state actors. We also have Brazil's relationship with CARICOM, of which we are a dialogue partner. We have the Association of Caribbean States, of which Brazil is an observer member. And we have even the trilateral working groups with Guyana and Suriname, which could be strengthened and expanded to include new members. And finally, a last point, I would like to stress that financing is also indispensable for any successful attempt of regional integration. So in the case of the Capricorn Corridor, for instance, very strong support came from Itaipu, our binational dam with Paraguay, and also from Fonplata, our regional bank represented here by President Luciana Botafogo. So in this sense, it's very important that governance for Brazil-Caribbean integration includes close dialogue with multilateral financial institutions, for example, the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, also the Development Bank of Latin America, CAF, our Caribbean Development Bank, which is hosting this event. And also we cannot forget of national institutions, such as Brazil's BNDES, which has historically played a very important role in enhancing integration in Latin America. So yes, we need effective governance involving private actor, subnational entities, and we also need to establish a very close dialogue with financial institutions, multilateral ones, and also national banks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You just make my life very easy, so I can skip my wrap-up because you just actually highlight the main points that were mentioned here. And just to mention, I think that one of the main points at the table during the summit on Friday is precisely how to establish a follow-up mechanism that makes sure that the commitments and the ideas you are putting forward can be proper followed, and that you have actually concrete results. And what you mentioned in terms of how to actually improve the governance of the different routes, and how we make sure that more than just talking about infrastructure, you are talking about development. So involving all the actors you just mentioned, something that we have been discussing with the Minister of Planning and Budget for a while, how we can do that. And I'm glad to hear that it's something that can also contribute, because in the end of the day, that's what it imports. You have to identify the problems, the solutions, and you have to make sure that everyone is on board so you can advance. So I mean, say no more. I believe that we still have a couple of minutes for questions. Otherwise, I mean, we can also have some discussions on later on the coffee break. I just would like to say first that their presentations will be online as well. And what we can do together, I can try to draft some sort of main conclusions documents that you can share among ourselves, and then you can make sure that it reach out our leaders in the summit and also during the discussions in the bank. Thank you again for this very frightful discussions. But then I think that you have some questions here. Someone is circulating with the micro, please. No? We are supposed to have, but otherwise we can manage here.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon. First of all, congratulations to Brazil and thank you for the hospitality, and the CDB and Brazil for the organization of this meeting and this interesting panel on the framework of the CDB governor's activities. I'm the Venezuelan governor to the CDB, and I'm also the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Venezuela. That said, I must respectfully express a concern and a more formal objection, is that the Guyana Island corridor or route shown in the presentation crosses the territory of the Essequibo, which is subject to a long-standing and unresolved territorial dispute between Venezuela and Guyana. This matter must be addressed within the framework of the Geneva Agreement to reach a practical and mutually satisfactory solution. This, we have complained in the past through diplomatic notes on this regard. Any initiative involving that area should avoid assuming a settled territorial status and should respect the existence of an ongoing controversy. Venezuela strongly supports regional integration and connectivity, and we would like even to be engaged in most of these initiatives. We reiterate Brazil, our commitment to work together. On the other hand, we have positive news. We have very soon opening the flight Sao Paulo-Caracas that will give an additional way to get to the Caribbean. We have from Venezuela flights to Barbados, to St. Lucia, to St. Vincent, to Suriname and Trinidad, direct flights. So we kindly offer also our possibilities in order to help in all this initiative of Brazil in the framework of respect. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just let me jump into this, and then you can take another one. Thank you for your remarks. I mean, of course, as you mentioned, the beauty of this agenda is that it actually unites everyone, regardless of differences, and you have been able to manage to even during some more, let's say, sensitive times in our regions, the discussions and the interests on infrastructures. We have the South American network of infrastructures. We have the participation of all countries where this kind of issues and where we can connect each and every of the routes and to the benefit of the whole region and to the benefit of also our connection is being discussing. So this is a very important and very glad to know that Caracas, São Paulo flight is going to be open soon. This is something that we all need in our region. Thank you. I think that you have another question there.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. This is a very exciting conversation, and I'm sorry that it has been dampened a little bit, but I'm from Guyana. I'm not intention to raise diplomatic issues at this forum. The future is now. And I come from the institution like planning and finance. And I love the remarks made by the Minister of Planning and Finance. The future is now. Let me state that I fully endorse the relationship and the governance mechanism of President Lula and the summit that will be on Friday that President Irfan Ali will attend, or is expected to attend, to advance the operations and advance the development agenda in a very aggressive manner. Now, let's be clear about this. President Lula built the bridge from Bomfin to Letem in his first term. He's coming back, and he's also made very clearly and identifiable announcements about the corridor. Guyana Shield has always been part of the IRSA development agenda, and we are pursuing that relentlessly. And it is happening. The Caribbean Development Bank has in fact started with grant facility from the British government, and we have started the road from Letem to Mabura. The gap exists between Mabura and Letem about 300 to 400 kilometers. We're currently studying that. We have done the feasibility studies. All the traffic from northern Brazil has been evaluated, and we know it's a major corridor that will link initially the markets through Port Georgetown. But that's not what will happen ultimately. Ultimately, what will happen is that we're building a deep water harbor and container port in the Berbice River. The road is going to be built alongside a rail which is currently being studied by the Bechtel Group. The Bechtel Group is doing all the feasibility study right now, so there will be a road and a rail linking the Berbice River right up into Lethem. The bridge across the Quarantine River, which is currently under immediate consideration by the Surinamese government and the government of Guyana, is to be built on a 50-50 basis. So that bridge will be built. The only gap that will exist will be the bridge across Suriname to French Guyana. And that takes us to Amapa, it takes us to Belém, and it will be Brazil to Brazil. It's the only connection that links Brazil to Brazil. There's no other way. The port, the rail, and the road. That is happening now. I welcome the Brazilian government's positive outlook of this program. It is part of the ERSA program. Like the Northern Arc has been on the table for quite a while, we still have to pursue that for the long term. And digital, we had already started. You recall several years ago, we were laying fiber optic cables from Georgetown to Brazil. It went into some difficulties because of engineering problems. The cable itself couldn't sustain the road in this present condition. Guyana is expanding the Sedijagan International Airport now to a second terminal. It likely to be one of the potential hubs to get to Latin America. Guyana is also on the other side of the Atlantic to West Africa. So potentially, you're looking at West Africa crossing the Atlantic to Guyana for whole of South America through a hub in Guyana. The future is today. The future is now. And there is nothing that will stop that future. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know whether there is any other, because it's not necessarily a question, even though it was a very interesting remarks. Don't know if there is any other specific question. No? Well, I mean, I was tempted to actually say some lines in terms of conclusion, but I think that would be better if I actually give you the opportunity to, but 1 minute each, because we were finishing, to actually give what would be the main message we should be conveying, because this is important. And I thank you all for being here today. This is the beginning of a discussion. I'm glad to announce that we are going to organize a focus seminar on ports pretty soon this year here in Brazil to also keep discussing these issues. And I take the message serious in terms of governance and how we can work together. So 1 minute each, what would be the key message, the same order?
Same order, okay. This is excellent, this is excellent. Just in 1 minute, 3 things. First of all, to build this route of South America integration program, we have talked, and we keep on talking with all countries from South America, from Argentina to Venezuela, and I mentioned this in alphabetical order. Don't get me wrong. We spoke, and we keep on speaking with all governments of South America. We spoke, and we keep on speaking with all the 27 states of Brazil. All of the 27 states, from Amapá in the Amazon to Rio Grande do Sul in the south. It's easier to do it top down. I read some books, I read some papers, I know it all, this is going to be the policy. The harder way is to do it listening, changing, adapting, after listening to all of the countries and all of the states. That's what we have been doing since May 2023. Second to last point, I went to Georgetown last year. Georgetown is the capital of a country that is border from Brazil, Guyana. I went in a mission of state, the job that I currently hold. I went from Brasilia, here, the capital of my country, to Miami. So I saw Georgetown from the airplane, went to Miami with an American visa, and then back to Georgetown. Folks from my ministry that didn't have the American visa had to go from Brasilia to London, and then London to Georgetown. Georgetown to Boa Vista, the capital of Roraima state, is the same distance that here, Brasilia, to Belo Horizonte, the capital of Minas Gerais state. Brasilia is the third largest city in Brazil. Belo Horizonte is the fourth largest city in Brazil. The same distance. If you take your car now and you go and drive to Belo Horizonte, it takes 9 hours. The same distance, Boa Vista to Georgetown, folks from our ministry took 21 hours to do it because of the black part of the road that my friend just said, we need to have it. We need to have it. Third and last, events like this, I want to stress this in 10 seconds. Let's connect. As soon as we're over here, let's engage with one another. Let's use the intelligence that we all have and the connections that we all have to, at the very least, exchange WhatsApp. We use a lot of WhatsApp in Brazil. Or at the very least to exchange phone numbers, because we can connect with our teams and the private sectors and the social movements that we all know. And I stop here.
Well, thank you. Again, we express our appreciation for giving us the opportunity to participate in this conversation. We at the Caribbean Development Bank are a relatively small organization, but we believe that our role is essential to act as a catalyst for development in the Caribbean and neighboring regions. So for us, our pledge is to continue the work and to ramp up our work in terms of the collaborations that we've been doing to facilitate the conversation that you've been speaking about, where we actually take the feedback from the stakeholders to develop the plans and move forward. So from us, I think we focus a lot on Guyana today, but we work with Trinidad, we work with Jamaica, other countries to improve connectivity in the region, and we continue and commit to strengthening those efforts and extending them to Brazil. Thank you.
Veronica.
I guess I have to end up with an optimistic tone here, because to be honest, it's not very common to have these discussions involving the private sector, and it is about listening and making measures and initiatives that work in partnership between the public and the private, the private sector will work in terms of demand, and it will work if we have transparency and some predictability to do business. It's as easy as that, let's put it this way. Not simple, but it's very clear and straightforward. We have discussed here several potential measures that I believe would contribute to improving connectivity, be it air connectivity, land or maritime connectivity, and digital connectivity. I suppose it's about the way forward, and I'm glad to hear that we have a path here, set of paths to continue this networking and to keep this momentum going, so the measures actually get implemented. Because often we have very good ideas and we don't implement them. And maybe we won't be able to implement all at once, but every single one of these measures discussed here, they will contribute to the private sector to do our part, to do business, right? So thank you very much for having this event, this debate, and please count on Embraer to continue this debate and to continue thinking of the way forward. Thank you.
Mr. Sobonja, are you still with us? Wow. Don't think so. So just, Rocky.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that the message, I will repeat the message here that let's connect. I think this is very important. Of course, we are trying to build the, let's say, the environment, the scenario, I mean, to allow the connectivity to happen, right? But of course that we are trying to do our part, our job in this. But it's much better if you get, I mean, the results, I mean, what we have done and what we are doing becomes reality in terms of connection, in terms of connectivity. I think this is very important. The world is getting closer and closer, but we still have some gaps that we need to, I mean, to work on, right? And I think that the presentation I had is on the site, so you have my connection there, my contact there, and if you can be of any assistance, please let us know, okay? Okay, and thanks again, I mean, for inviting us.
Mr. Sobonge, please, quick final remark.
Governance and infrastructure are definitely important. But as I was saying before, the service providers need to be engaged. And if they don't bring the service, then you need to take the initiative to provide it. And what I'm saying again and again, and for 30 years I have seen this problem of connectivity. And connectivity is not solved at the governance level. We tried to have an air service agreement 20 years ago, and it is still there without most of our membership signals. And in the end, if you don't really have the demand, which is basically the case, you won't have the service. It doesn't matter how much governance and infrastructure you build. We need to go back to those days where maybe we provided, our countries had the shipping line, our other countries had the airline. But just relying on the market, that doesn't necessarily work. And we need to focus on one thing. The new world that we have is a different world altogether. It brings a lot of challenges and also brings a lot of opportunities. And that opportunity is really coming from improving our integration as a region, both in terms of political but also economic. And I just leave you with that because I know that you are short.
Please.
So, being the last one to talk, I would like to, oh yes, but anyway, I would like to thank the Caribbean Development Bank and our Ministry of Planning for organizing this event. I think this panel discussion was really enriching and a very interesting conversation. I'm very glad that we could mention different dimensions of regional integration between Brazil and the Caribbean. We talked about physical integration, digital integration, energy, land connections, maritime routes. And I also think it's not trivial to have such a diverse panel here. We have Brazilian government, we have research institutions, multilateral banks, private sector. This is really interesting also to create ties between different sectors of society, so civil society, government, research institutions. And just to conclude, I would like to announce that this Thursday at 2 o'clock at IPEA, Brazil's Institute for Applied Economic Research, we are also organizing a seminar on the relations between Brazil and the Caribbean. We will be very pleased to count with the presence of Ambassador Daniela and also with the distinguished participation of Secretary General Noemi Madrid, who is the Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States. We will also present some results and conclusions of our research, and I would like to extend the invitation to everybody here. So this Thursday actually, at IPEA at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Well, thank you. With that, we're going to close our session before you expel. My bad. I'm terrible in managing time, but I think the discussion was very interesting and very fruitful. I thank you all. What I take from here, more dialogue, more interaction, more coordination, more governance, more engagement, and follow-up. Absolutely follow-up, and I hope this, as I mentioned before, this is the first of many of these discussions, so you can finally have an impact and come up with concrete solutions and a plan to connect us better. Thank you very much. We still have a coffee break, I hope, and the session will begin. Thank you again for the bank for having us here, the Minister of Planning, and for you for your patience, and I hope you have take from here also some ideas for future development. Thank you very much.